Hello, loves, and welcome to the Psychic Sages, your podcast for all things psychic development, spirituality, and Reiki. My name is Linda, and I'm joined today by my lovely and wonderful co host, Megan.
Hey.
And we thought as a first episode, we'd introduce ourselves and let you know about our journeys when it comes to psychic development, spirituality, and Reiki.
I feel like we've been waiting a really long time, but we haven't been waiting for a long time.
No, it's just that we're both so impatient that we want we want to
Yeah.
start as soon as the idea hits. We're both ready to go.
We have the juicy ideas and we're ready to just run into everything. But the
Yeah.
universe slowed us down a little bit.
I mean, for you listening right now, just so you know, this has been like 4 or 5 months. Four or
Yeah.
5 months where since we had the idea and we wanted to go, had the equipment up and ready to go, and everything else came in and was like, not now, not now, not now, not now. But now it's time. So I'm really excited.
Me too. It feels right. I'm
Yeah,
very excited.
me too. Okay, so let's hop into our topic actually.
Okay.
Get yourself a cozy beverage if you haven't already and strap in because we're going to talk about it. Let's start talking about psychic development. I'm actually going to take this one first if you don't mind.
I don't.
All right. So
I'm
I
going to
wanted to
strap in
speak.
and listen.
Feel
Yeah.
like you know a lot already.
I can't
So,
wait.
for my psychic development, it's interesting because it started very early on when I was a child. I was clairsentient and I felt spirits around. I'm pretty sure I also saw some, but I don't remember. Ever since I was a child, I've also had some dreams that were bringing in premonitions, and then for a while, for actually a large period of my life, it went away because of trauma and I was so disconnected from my body. We're going to dive deeper into that in a different episode because I think it's interesting to see the development of that.
Mhm.
And the clairsentience has been my strongest one up until recently, when through my work with Reiki, spoiler alert, through my work with Reiki, the clairvoyance started to take over big time. Tarot has been very helpful on my journey to connect with my intuition as well. And I would say those are my strongest two, clairsentience and clairvoyance, or maybe actually clairaudience.
I was going to say, what about your clairaudience? It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think it's because it's such a natural part of me that I didn't think
Mhm.
about it. Maybe
Mhm.
that means that that's the strongest one.
Mhm. I wonder. Yeah.
But then again, also, does it really matter which one is the strongest one? Okay,
No.
these are my top three. Top three being able to hear spirits and to perceive, and yeah, being connected in it with everything that way.
Would you share a little bit about maybe an example of how those clears work through you?
Sure.
Because I think it can be different for every person.
Yeah, that's
How
true.
is it how
So
is it for you specifically?
clairsentience, I can feel energies in the room in two ways. I can um, sense that something's there. I just have a feeling that something is in the room. When it's not right next to me, for example, I will feel that there is some kind of presence there, and I get some information about that presence as well. And quite often, when this energy moves closer to me, I can physically feel that energy with my body. Like I feel sometimes energies feel warm, sometimes they feel almost like electric electricity or some kind of like static electricity that's in the form of a body. And I
Mhm.
can, when I move my hands around, by the way, if I sense that energy, and if I move my hands, I can locate exactly where that energy is as well. So, the room temperature will be normal where that energy is not. And then when I move my hand into the energy field of that being, whatever is there, then it changes. And yeah, sometimes it feels like cold, and I can sense also my own spirit guides this way. They feel different, and different sensations mean different spirits. And that's where the clairaudience comes in as well, because uh, before I started to hear them, I actually felt them, and I used to feel them in moments when I was in emotional distress. I would feel a touch here and there, and like very, very distinct touches that made me, for example, stop crying and look around and look if there actually was someone there, because it was such strong of a sensation.
Mm.
And then the clairaudience kicked in. I mean, like that's a good story to tell for maybe another time. The way that the clairaudience kicked in,
Can you share the
um,
age that you were when you felt like clairaudience
kicked in.
kicked in?
Oh wait, it was in 2020, so I was
Mhm.
28. 28 when that kicked in. Um, Big time. I started to hear them, and then it just was like something was all opened up, and I started to hear them all the time. And I started to hear them particularly when I did tarot readings. Also
Mhm.
for other people readings, I started to hear messages not just coming from my guides, but also their guides. Some other entity messages that I did not want to hear because at that point I did not have good boundaries,
Mhm.
right? Because when you're open, you're open. And in the beginning, I didn't know any better how to shield myself and protect. And then the clairvoyance was, like I said, was peeking through every now and then when it comes to the dream life and seeing dreams and having premonitions, particularly about people close to me and bad things happening to them, which was then paired when I woke up with a clairsentience of knowing that this is going to happen. But from the very beginning, I got was actually really nice. I'm kind of getting a guidebook with those dreams. And when I get a dream and I wake up and I have this like crazy urge to do something or to message them or to reach out, then I know there's an action for me to take. And then when I take it, it sometimes changes the outcome and or it helps the person in some way. It's supportive. But most of the time I will get these dreams and I wake up and there is no urge to do nothing. So I just know a bunch of things. But it's difficult because I never know if the dream that I saw is about the timeline that everyone else is on right now, or if I just saw some alternate version of what might happen. And I feel like when I'm getting the intuitive hit to take some action, it's because we are on that timeline and there's something that I can actually do. And when I see something else, there's maybe we are still on the timeline, but maybe that's a fated event to happen. And
Mm.
yeah, that's kind of how I handle that. And since becoming more of a healer myself, these kind of dreams started to become more centered on myself and having dreams and visions of past life memories of mine, visions connected to my work and everything just opening up that way. I see visions when I do tarot readings, and I see, yeah, like visuals that explain a particular energy if I have trouble finding words. And sometimes I will see visions that don't make sense to me, but when I share them in a reading, it really connects with the client, and it's actually symbol for the client that I don't need to know about. And yeah, that's where that came from.
I
How
just
about
want to
you?
add, it sounds like, the knowing that a spirit is in the room with you before you physically feel it is claircognizance, and that you know some information sometimes about what it is. Is that true?
Yeah, but I that's the thing. These things are so interconnected for me that it's difficult to completely pick them apart,
Yeah.
because I will often then, for example, it's not that I just hear something. I will see, let's say, I will see a visual, a short visual in a tarot reading or something like this, and then I will simultaneously start to hear a phrase or just one word or something like this. So it's
Yeah.
really going hand in hand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also with the clairsentience, I mean, clairsentience is also something that I just intuitively feel in my body when I'm giving a Reiki treatment, for example, like where do I need to place my hands? How do I know if it's the distinction between I feel I need to go there and the feeling that I have that I need to go there is actually an inner knowing. So for me, separating these two is very, very difficult. I don't think it's necessary, like it just works the way that it works.
I agree. I agree. That resonates with me too. Yeah.
And for you?
Yeah. Uh, Linda, you know so much about this because recently, and I mean since January of this year, we're in 2024 right now, and in January, my clairsentience just blew up.
Why did it
And
blow up?
that has a lot to do with my whole story of moving to be the person that I am becoming on my spiritual path. And clairsentience was a very important piece of the puzzle. And I had learned Reiki 1 and Reiki 2 in July of the previous year. So just, 7 months, 6 months before my clairsentience broke open, I had learned Reiki 1 and 2. I think that Reiki was a an entry point for me to really access my clairs the way that, that they're going to develop and that I'm
Yeah.
going to be using them for my ultimate work down the road. Before that, as a child and all my life, clear cognizance was it. Not the only thing, but it was it. And I always just knew things. And it was such a part of who I was that I didn't even understand that it was a psychic ability.
Yeah.
It was such a part of me. And I'm really fortunate because that never got shut down. I didn't grow up feeling that that was strange or that I should quiet that. So that really led me through my life until I did have my spiritual awakening. So that was in 2019.
Mhm.
Um, and at that point, claircognizance really came into play. And that was exciting for me. I also was way open and I was seeing
Yeah.
lots of things, but I wasn't afraid of any of it, which in hindsight is very surprising because growing up as a child, I had lots of spirit encounters and I definitely lived in a house that people would classify as haunted. There was
Hmm.
lots of spirit activity in my home growing up. And I'll never know for sure exactly what that all was. I never made sense of it as a child. And I think going backwards in time and trying to look at it in hindsight, it would be too difficult to know what the truth really is. But I had a lot going on in my childhood with spirits, and I was actually pretty afraid. I was very, very scared. It's interesting
Yeah.
that uh, when my seeing opened up, that I wasn't so afraid. And then I had actually just maybe 6 months after my seeing opened, I had a really horrible experience with another human. I threw myself really too fast and far into a new friendship with someone who ended up being unsafe for me. And that really scared me and it completely shut me down. So I had to reopen my psychic abilities after that and kind of relearn at that point. Then
Yeah.
Reiki came into the story. in 2023. And so clairsentience was the first thing. And Linda, you know this. It was almost painful. And I
Yeah.
think you had that experience too with your clairsentience. Is that true?
Well, it was different from for me than it was for you. So I remember for Megan, I guess it was the same kind of. A little bit of backstory. I used to live in Berlin for 8 years. And that's when my spiritual awakening, I would say I had two. The first one that was more underneath the surface. That was in 2021. Yeah, 2021. And then I had one, when I say underneath the surface, was basically the first time that I woke up and looked around at everything that was happening in my life and thinking, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I basically started to go on this 10-year journey of, or like through the dark night of the soul in like a very intense way, and um, working my way through childhood trauma, like big time for 10 years, very, very deep in it. And then when I started to come out of that journey in 2020, that's when the other psychic abilities started to wake up more. So that's what I would classify as my awakening. And one thing that happened was that all of my senses were heightened. So I was super sensitive to, let's say, noise, for example, because my
Mm.
clairaudience was waking up. And I was living in the city center of Berlin. And also, when I started to learn Reiki, uh, everything was more heightened and more sensitive. I was more sensitive to light, even just going outside and walking. So I had to wear sunglasses more often, just to give you a very, very practical example. And it reached a point where the city was too loud for me. Like everything was too loud. It was too intense. I had to do that when I was younger before, but it was much more intense. Let's say even just wrapping myself in a cloak of energy protection when I just wanted to use the subway, because I could feel the energy of every single person on there. And Berlin in general is quite an intense city to live in, with lots of intense kind of energies, kind
Uh,
of I love that city. I don't live there anymore, but I have a lot of love for that city. But it was kind of dense and kind of heavy and very interesting kind of mix. And it just was no longer the place I needed to be. So ultimately, you could say that my sensitivity when it comes to my senses made me like move to the countryside and needing to change my environment because it was just too much. I was constantly stressed.
yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Definitely. I experienced that when I was attuned to Reiki, Reiki 1 and attuned to Reiki 2. Same. I had to wear sunglasses. My sensory perception, extrasensory perception just blew wide open, and things felt too loud or uncomfortable. People's energy felt too big or alarming to my system.
Yeah.
And uh, just to go back to the clairsentience breaking open for me, the reason why I am clairsentient now the way that I am is because uh, I began sensing spirits around me, all different kinds of entities. And it was so magnified in the beginning. Everything was turned up so loud.
Yep.
I was feeling not only all of the spirits that were around me and in my home, but everything else when I would walk outside of my apartment. I remember leaving you a voice message one day, and I was out of breath
Yeah.
because the clear sentience of the heaviness of what I was feeling around me was actually making my lungs like feel that they were concrete and stiff, and I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And it was just like from one day to the next, I was breathing heavily for one day. Just that energy was so dense in my system. It took, I don't know if you remember, I don't really remember. It took, I think, a good month or maybe 6 weeks for my clairsentience then to for the volume to be turned down. And I understood once the volume was turned down that it was very important for it to be so loud in the beginning, because the subtleties of what my clairsentience was bringing to me it was very clear and I understood all of that, kind of like babies experiencing the world in a very full on extreme way in the beginning, putting everything in their mouth
Yeah.
and, really needing to wrap themselves around what they're throwing themselves into. And that was my experience with clairsentience. And it wasn't scary because I had another human with me, um, you, Linda, who said to me, I've been through
Yeah.
this. It's going to
Yeah.
be okay. If I had been alone, it would have freaked me out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I remember that time well. It's like, the volume is turned all the way up so that you are allowed to, or that you're able to connect with that in a stronger way, so when it's more subtle again, you're still able to connect with that in a way and recognize that this is actually information coming in. I think if it's very quiet
Right.
in the beginning, we kind of gloss over it. If it's like we're everything in our world in general is so loud that everything it takes a lot of effort. I want to say it takes a lot of effort to tune into your subtle senses.
Especially when you're living in a city,
Yeah.
which you were for
Yeah.
a long time, and
Yeah.
I am currently and have for most of
Yeah.
my life. Yeah.
Yeah, no, center life was brutal for me, for sure.
Yeah.
There was
I
also a construction site across from my house, and they were, a pandemic, everyone's at home, and construction site was still going strong, going on, and they would start, like, delivering things at 5 a.m., and they would, work until 6 or 7 p.m., and then there's the noise of the city in general, and it was like it felt suffocating, like I could never catch a break, and I remember I would drive outside of the city, so there's a lot of forest around Berlin. And every time that I would leave the city, I'm a forest person in general, like I love the forest. But when every single time when I went to the forest to like rest, refresh, and recharge, it felt like coming home. And every time I drove into the city, it felt like I was going the wrong way. And I remember I had one moment where I was standing um, at like one of the crossroads. If you are familiar with Berlin, I was standing in my car at the traffic light at Rosenthaler Platz, and I was standing there, and the traffic light was red, and it was Sunday, and I was sitting there, and I just saw like the masses of people like walking across the street, and I looked up and I saw all of these concrete buildings, like the skyscrapers, all of the like high concrete buildings going round, and I was had this almost like it was almost an outer body moment where I looked at everything and I was like, this looks so surreal right now. Everything about this looks so unnatural and wrong.
mm,
Yeah. And then the light turned green. I needed to go. I was like, that's new. Okay, the intensity. I heard the message, I just didn't take action on it. I think that's another thing. If you don't take action on those subtle messages that you receive, everything gets turned up
they get
exponentially
louder.
louder. But one thing I wanted to add, which I did not bring up at all, is about the spirits and seeing them, is that I'm a medium as well. I
Right.
can see earthbound spirits and connect
Right.
with earthbound spirits and
Right.
Reiki. I When it comes to Reiki, I don't even know what to say right now because there's so much about my journey with Reiki. But what I will say is this: Reiki brought me to a place where I am now able to perceive disruptions in the energy system overall. Disruptions in the energy systems of a home, let's say, and that could be an entity that's present there. That could be some kind of negative energy that's hanging around. That could be some thought forms that are hanging around. Anything that's not supposed to be there, anything that's not supportive, I can pick up and see when it comes to the space of a home. I can also see and perceive that when it comes to a client that comes to me for a Reiki session. I see where it's located in the body or in the auric field, how these things are connected as well, and I can get information as well as to how this is affecting the client. And all of these clairs are coming together to bring this kind of healing gift to life, and Reiki is the
Mhm.
vehicle that allows me to do that kind of work because I can not only perceive it, but I can also give it cleansing, healing, and fully release it and cross it over whatever is there. But the story of how my mediumship started to wake up again, that's a wild ride. That was a wild ride because I did not want to go down that journey at all. I did not want to get it started happening and I was like, "Oh no." Oh
Yes,
no. No. I noticed my work started to shift and I was like, "I'm not no, I don't want this." Do you remember?
I do. I do.
I did not want to do this at all. And it's funny because me not wanting to do that at all came from the ego. I felt like I was already so far out there with the kind of work that I was doing. I was already, doing tarot professionally. I was already giving regular Reiki sessions professionally. I didn't do releasement sessions. And I was like, okay, this part popped up in my life, and clearly this is taking over my life for like a solid 6 months.
Yeah.
It was mayhem at my house. It was mayhem with spirits showing up right, left, and center, and all different kinds as well. You had the earthbound spirits, the ones that the humans that died, it didn't cross over. I had some energetic ET encounters. I had all different other kinds of energies just showing up and saying hello. I
No,
didn't want to have it.
get out.
I did not want to have it.
Right. So I'll jump on that and bridge into the fact that I am also a medium and have been my whole life, uh, but told myself that I was just kind of making that up as some I don't like to use the word imagined. I was just saying to Linda, I think I'm going to use the word fabricated. I convinced myself when I was young that I was making it up. And at the point on my spiritual journey where I was allowing myself to be open to everything that was coming to me, and I made an agreement with myself that I wasn't going to doubt myself and that I was going to really move forward with faith and trust on my journey. And at that point, everything became clear to me about what my psychic abilities are and what they have been. So, mediumship is something that I've always been able to do in a very limited capacity. But when spirit has a message for me that isn't kind of direct from source, when it's coming through, let's say, someone who's crossed over, uh, then I sometimes am given a very clear and strong message from from someone. I had that experience right when I had my spiritual awakening in 2019. A, a very, very old best friend of mine, her father, who died, and I didn't know that he died, he started reaching out to me from the other side. And I didn't know it was him, but he was sending really strong signs for me to get in touch with her. And as soon as I did, she told me that he had died. And I was just in complete shock that he had brought me back to her to be in connection with her. And it's funny because I don't think that I said out loud that I'm a medium until Linda and I were talking. And Linda, you said that to me, you're a medium. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's something about claiming the name as well and like naming what you're actually doing.
that's right. That's right. Coming out of a closet, you know? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I have some
yeah.
experience with that for sure.
All different kinds of closets coming out
All
for all
different kinds
different
of
reasons.
closets. So yeah, we're
Yeah.
laughing because, recent experiences of mine, and I'm questioning how many more times can I come out of how many different kind of closets. Like sexuality, gender identity, spirituality, all of those, like, what's left? But I'm
Bring
sure
it
there are
on.
left. I'm sure
Bring
there
it.
will be some left.
Let's
I
go.
feel like I'm getting with each closet that I'm coming out of, I'm getting more practice. But
Yeah.
I have one more question for you actually. You said that you received signs from the father. How did they present themselves to you? Did you see them in a dream, or
Mm.
how did you get them?
I do lots of dream work. Dreams are a really powerful part of my psychic abilities and what I receive. But he got in touch with me through just in waking life, big signs that I couldn't ignore. The first thing I started seeing was her birthday everywhere.
Mm,
She's a
okay.
really old friend. So I was seeing her birthday everywhere. And this was at a time where all the signs that I was looking at were about me and my spiritual path. So suddenly to see the birthday of someone who I wasn't in touch with, who's a very old friend, that caught my eye.
Yeah.
And then I mean, really, like, bravo, because he pulled out some amazing things. Like, I was at a cafe. I don't know if you feel this way, Linda, but there are some kind of magical places in my life where I've, like a cafe where I often go and I feel like I get a lot of downloads there. I had a
Yeah.
place that I went to for quite a while, which was like that. And I was sitting at a table, and right on top of the table was a newspaper. And that newspaper had a very detailed, drawn image of the human brain and the human heart.
Mhm.
And later that day, our family decided we were going to jump in our car and drive to a farm like an hour outside of Frankfurt where we live. It was a very random decision. And we took our kids to a farm, and we walk into the farm with the farm animals and other families running around, and they randomly had a gallery showing of art pieces up in a lofted space of their barn.
Mm.
And the first piece I saw when I walked up the stairs on the other side of the room was a sculpture of a human brain and a human heart. And I was like, this is so bizarre. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was a really very big synchronicity that I should be paying attention to. And I'll wrap this story up because it's, not important. There was one last sign that he sent because I was getting this strong urge to reach out to her.
Yeah.
And it was hard to reach out to her because I had broken ties and I was feeling very guilty about that.
Mm.
So I sent her a voice message apologizing and telling her that I just had this strong urge to reach out and that she didn't have to send me any message in return. And I stopped the voice message and stood up and started crying. And I opened up my kitchen window, and lying on the ground in our little courtyard outside of my kitchen window was nothing except for a dead black bird. And I was like, whew, what's that all about? And when she got back to me, she let me know that her dad had died completely out of the blue,
Wow.
unexpectedly. And at
Yeah.
that moment, she told me the circumstances of his death, which brought in the brain and the heart. And I was like, oh
Okay.
my gosh,
Wow. Yeah.
that was him.
Yeah.
Goosebumps. It was a powerful moment because he was watching me here on earth at that time, knowing Megan's breaking into her psychic abilities. She's using signs from the universe right now. That's how she's getting messages from her team. So I'm going to go that route with her.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
That's
I did the
amazing.
thing where I Googled dead bird, and the
Yeah.
first hit that came up was dead loved one trying to get it, trying to reach out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I know you do this too. Like some people I know who are psychic, the Googling thing doesn't work for them, and that's not a way that they get information. But you and I often, we know, like, okay, if I Google this, I'm gonna see the thing that I need to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. That's the clear sentience that's kicking in and letting me know, okay, I feel like I should look this up.
Yeah.
I feel like I should look this up. Yeah.
I want to
And I
add
mean,
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to say Googling is kind of a slippery slope.
That's right. That's right.
particularly for me this year, I realized there are so many experiences that I've had, there is no way I could Google them, which is actually exactly why we started this podcast in the first place. You know, we haven't talked about our motivation yet, but
Mm.
this is the reason why we started this podcast, because the two of us have so many experiences when it comes to I'm going to say extrasensory perception, and also then figure out what it actually means for us and how everything is connected and tied into also our own healing journeys, for example. And we didn't see anybody speaking about these things and sharing their experiences and unraveling all of it. And that's why we decided, if we're looking for someone like that, there will be others who are also looking for people like that. So let us just start this conversation and be the ones that start sharing. Because I'm sure that if you're listening to this, you can relate. You've had your own experiences, but you know there's so many things you can't Google, or nobody just ever talks about that stuff, at least in public. I think there's a distinction to make here, at least in public.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to normalize a lot of this stuff because it is really normal and it's really prevalent and it's really common. And unfortunately, children who experience a lot of these things, they're being shown or told that it's not okay. And in a lot of cases, they're being told that this is scary. And we're going to be covering a lot of elements of the spirit world,
Yeah,
and we want to dispel a lot of myths. We
yeah,
have really learned a lot about the spirit world and its mingling with us here on earth, and other things as well. We want to dispel a lot of myths. We really want to clear the air and release a lot of fear.
yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest factor for me as well. It's about the fear that comes when people are sharing stories about spirits that they encounter or other kinds of beings.
Yeah,
And I don't want to say that none of the encounters are scary per se. You know, that's not what I'm saying. It's just very sensationalized and like drenched in fear, and people are. It's almost like encounters are given a meaning through the conditioning that we have before we actually make sense of the encounters themselves, right?
absolutely.
With that said, we will tell you some scary stories. Don't worry
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
There are some scary
There's
stories coming in
there's no
for
way
sure
around
over
it.
the next couple of months. There are some scary encounters that we had, but you know they're gonna be unraveled and contextualized, and then you know we're sitting here. We know how to deal with them, so that
Yeah.
you also will be able to deal with them, whatever you may find.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I think this is actually a good stopping point for episode one. How you feeling?
Yeah, this is good. I agree.
All right. So, my loves, our next episode is actually going to be about our intuition and how we developed our intuition and connected to that. We're going to have one episode that focuses on my development, and we're going to have one whole episode that focuses on Megan's development as well. That's going to come in the next 2 weeks. So, stay tuned. Thank you for listening and have a lovely rest of your day.